My name doesn't matter right now. What matters is the dollar bill. I still have it, laminated, sitting in a drawer in my new apartment. The one my father doesn't know the address of. I look at it sometimes when I need reminding that the worst day of my life turned into the best decision I ever made. But let me back up. Let me tell you about my 25th birthday. My twin sister, Mira, and I were born 4 minutes apart. She came first. Our whole lives, those 4 minutes meant nothing, until they meant everything. Growing up, people couldn't tell us apart. Same face, same laugh, same gap in our front teeth. But our father, Richard, always could. He always knew exactly who was who, and exactly who mattered more. I told myself for 25 years that I was imagining it. That the extra hug he gave Mira after her piano recitals was nothing. That paying for her study abroad semester in Florence while telling me community college built character was just practical. That forgetting my graduation because it conflicted with a work trip that turned out to be a golf weekend, was just bad luck. I was very good at lying to myself. I'd had a lot of practice. Our birthday party was at his house, the big one on the hill that he bought 2 years after our mother died, like grief was a debt he could pay off with square footage. 50 guests, a catering company, a string quartet, because Mira liked elegant things. I stood near the back in a dress I'd bought on clearance, holding a glass of champagne I couldn't afford to enjoy because I was doing math in my head about rent. Then my father stood up, tapped his glass, and made an announcement. For my brilliant daughter, Mira, who's about to start her MBA. A little something to get her there in style. He walked outside. Everyone followed, because that's what you do when a rich man tells you to follow him. There, in the circular driveway, wrapped in a bow the size of a beach ball, sat a brand new white Tesla Model Y. Mira screamed, cried, hugged him. The crowd applauded like they were watching a movie. I clapped too. What else do? You stand there in your clearance dress and you clap for your sister's car and you tell yourself it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Then my father turned to me. The whole party turned with him. He reached into his pocket, and for one stupid, hopeful second, I thought, maybe there's a second surprise. Maybe there's a card. Maybe, finally. He pressed something into my hand. A single dollar bill. Crumpled. Warm from his pocket. For you, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, smiling like he'd made a joke. Buy yourself something nice. The laughter started slow, uncertain, then spread through the crowd like people weren't sure if it was okay to laugh, and then decided it was, because he was laughing too. I laughed. I actually laughed, because the alternative was screaming, and screaming wasn't going to get me anything except the reputation of being the difficult twin. The dramatic one. The one who can't take a joke. So I smiled. I said thank you. I put the dollar in my purse, and I stayed until the party ended. Then I drove home in my 12-year-old Honda with a check engine light that had been on for 3 months, and I sat in my driveway, and I did not cry. I got angry instead. Because here's the thing about being underestimated your whole life. It teaches you to watch, to listen, to notice things. And I had noticed something 3 weeks earlier that I hadn't let myself think about too hard. I work in forensic accounting. Boring, right? That's what my father always thought too. The reliable one, he called me once, in a tone that made reliable sound like a consolation prize. He never once asked what I actually did all day. If he had, he might have been more careful. 3 weeks before that birthday party, I'd been helping a friend untangle her late mother's estate. Nothing to do with my family. When I noticed a name in a linked business filing that stopped me cold. A shell company. Registered 2 years earlier. Listed officer. Richard. My father's name. My father's signature, digitized right there in a public filing. I told myself it was a coincidence. Common name. I moved on. But that night, sitting in my driveway with a dollar bill in my purse, I stopped telling myself it was nothing. I went inside, opened my laptop, and I did what I do for a living. I pulled the filing again. Then I pulled the registered agent's records. Then the property records tied to the company's listed address. A 2-bedroom condo 40 minutes from his house, purchased 18 months ago. paid in cash. Then I found the second name on the account. Not my mother's, obviously. She'd been gone 6 years. Not Mira's. A woman named Claire, 34 years old, employed, until recently, as an executive assistant at my father's company. I sat back in my chair and I finally let myself do the math I'd been avoiding for years. The business trips. The sudden interest in restoring an old motorcycle he kept at a storage unit he thought none of us knew about. The trust fund he'd told Mira and me, individually, over separate dinners, was getting complicated with the market and might need to be restructured. He wasn't restructuring anything for the market. He was restructuring it for Claire. Here's where the story could have ended, the way it usually ends for people like me. I could have called Mira, cried on the phone, told her everything, and watched her defend him anyway, because that's what happens when someone gives you a Tesla. You don't want to believe the person who gave it to you is capable of theft. Instead, I did something quieter. I made a folder. I built it slowly, over 6 weeks, the way I build every case at work. Patiently, without emotion, letting the paper trail speak for itself instead of my feelings. Bank transfers. Property deeds. The exact date the trust fund's restructuring letter went out to Mira and me, 2 weeks after the condo closed. The dates lined up too perfectly to be anything but planned. He wasn't just having an affair. He was quietly moving our inheritance. Our mother's money. Money she'd earned. Money she'd wanted split evenly between her daughters. Into an account with another woman's name on it. Slowly enough that neither of us would notice until it was done. He thought the reliable one wasn't paying attention. He thought wrong. I didn't go to him first. I went to a lawyer. A trust and estate specialist who looked at my folder for 11 minutes without saying a word, then looked up at me and said, "You built this yourself?" "I had practice," I said. Being ignored teaches you to watch closely. She told me 2 things. First, that what he'd done was likely actionable. A breach of fiduciary duty tied to our mother's trust, with real consequences if we moved fast. Second, that I needed to decide how I wanted this to end. Quiet and clean, with a settlement. Or public and permanent. I thought about the dollar bill. I thought about the clapping. I thought about 25 years of being the reliable one, the practical one, the one who didn't need the nice things because she'd understand. I chose public. Not petty public. Not a screaming match at Thanksgiving. I mean documented, undeniable, delivered with a folder public. To Mira first, because she deserved the truth before anyone else got it, and because some tiny, hopeful part of me still believed my sister would choose me over the version of our father she'd built in her head. I was right to believe that. I sat her down, laid out every document, every date, every name, and I watched my sister's face change from confusion to disbelief to something colder and harder than I'd ever seen on her. She didn't defend him. She didn't ask if I was sure. She asked, "What do we do?" We did it together. 2 weeks later, with our lawyer present, we confronted him. Not with tears, not with accusations he could spin, but with paper. Bank statements. The deed. A photo of the condo. The exact dollar amount that had quietly vanished from our mother's trust and reappeared, restructured, in an account he didn't think 2 daughters he'd underestimated would ever find. I watched the color leave his face in real time. I watched him look, for the very first time in my life, unsure of what to say to me. He tried the things people like him always try. He said we were misunderstanding complicated finances. He said Claire was just a friend going through a hard time. He said, and I remember this word for word, "I was going to tell you eventually." I set the laminated dollar bill on the table between us. I hadn't planned to bring it. I'd grabbed it on the way out the door that morning without thinking, and in that moment, it felt like the only thing left to say. "You already did tell me," I said. "At my birthday. In front of 50 people. You told me exactly what you thought I was worth." He didn't have an answer for that. The legal process that followed wasn't dramatic, in the end. Most real justice isn't. It's paperwork and deadlines and quiet phone calls from lawyers. But it worked. The trust was restructured again, this time correctly, this time with oversight neither of us controlled, and split the way our mother had actually intended. Every dollar that had moved into that condo's account got traced, documented, and accounted for in the settlement. Mira sold the Tesla. She said she couldn't look at it without thinking about that driveway, about the two of us standing 4 feet apart, getting two completely different lives handed to us. She used the money, combined with her share of the trust, to start the MBA she actually wanted, on her own terms. I used my share to leave the apartment I could barely afford, to leave the job that undervalued me the same way my father had, and to start something of my own. A small forensic consulting practice that, 6 months in, now has more clients than I can take on alone. Funny thing about being the reliable one. Turns out reliability is a business model when nobody's around to make you feel small for having it. My father and I don't speak. Not out of rage anymore. That faded faster than I expected. Out of clarity. Some relationships end not with a slammed door, but with someone finally seeing clearly enough to walk through the one that was open the whole time. I still have the dollar. Laminated in my drawer. Not because I'm still angry. Because I want to remember what it feels like to be underestimated by someone who should have known better. And what it feels like, on the other side of that, to prove exactly how wrong they were. If you were the reliable one in your family too, the one nobody worried about because you never gave them a reason to, I want you to hear this clearly. Being underestimated isn't a weakness. It's cover. Use it well. If this story hit home, tell me in the comments. Were you ever handed the dollar bill in your family? And if you want more stories like this one, subscribe. Because trust me, this isn't the last time reliable won.